In a nationwide campaign of mail bombings between 1978 and 1995, Kaczynski targeted individuals he thought were advancing modern technology and causing environmental destruction, which resulted in the deaths of 3 people and the injuries of 23 others. He wrote the 35,000-word manifesto and social critique Industrial Society and Its Future, which opposed industrialization, scorned leftism, and pushed for an anarchism that was centered on the natural world. Welcome back. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe to the Past Crimes channel and leave us a comment below to let us know what other past crimes you would like to hear about. On May 22, 1942, Theodore John Kaczynski was born in Chicago to working-class parents Wanda Teresa and sausage maker Theodore Richard Kaczynski. Kaczynski went to Sherman Elementary School in Chicago from 1st to 4th grade, where the teachers said he was in good physical and mental health. The family relocated to the Illinois suburb of Evergreen Park in 1952, 3 years after David was born, and Ted enrolled at Evergreen Park Central Junior High School. He skipped the 6th grade after an IQ test revealed a score of 167. Later, Kaczynski referred to this as a turning point in his life. Before, he had interacted with his peers and even served as a leader. However, after skipping ahead of them, he felt excluded by the older kids, who then bullied him. Kaczynski excelled academically while attending Evergreen Park Community High School. He belonged to the mathematics, biology, cooing, and German clubs in addition to playing trombone in the marching band. A former classmate stated in 1996, he was never really seen as a person, as an individual personality. He was always regarded as a walking brain, so to speak. In terms of academic performance, Kaczynski excelled above his peers throughout high school. He was put in a more difficult mathematics class and quickly became proficient. By skipping the 11th grade and going to summer school, he was able to graduate at the age of 15. Kaczynski was encouraged to apply to Harvard because he was one of his school's 5 national merit finalists. He was accepted to Harvard when he was just 15 years old and enrolled on a scholarship there in 1958 at the age of 16. Later, a classmate claimed that Kaczynski was not emotionally ready. They packed him up and sent him to Harvard before he was ready. He didn't even have a driver's license. Kaczynski took part in a study conducted by Harvard psychologist Henry Murray during his 2nd year there, which author Alston Chase called a purposefully brutalizing psychological experiment. Subjects were asked to write essays outlining their individual beliefs and aspirations and were instructed that they would debate personal philosophy with another student. The essays were given to an unnamed person who would use the essay's content as a weapon to confront and denigrate the subject in what Murray himself called vehement, sweeping, and personally abusive attacks. The experiment lasted 3 years, with someone verbally abusing and humiliating Kaczynski each week. Later, Kaczynski's attorneys claimed that his involvement in Murray's study was what caused him to be hostile to mind control methods. According to some sources, Project MKUltra, the Central Intelligence Agency's study into mind control, included Murray's experiments. This encounter may have served as Kaczynski's inspiration for his criminal behavior, according to Chase and others. Kaczynski enrolled at the University of Michigan in 1962, and in 1964 and 1967, respectively, he received his master's and doctorate in mathematics from there. He had applied to the University of California, Berkeley, and the University of Chicago, both of which accepted him but did not provide him with a teaching position or financial aid. Michigan was not his first choice for postgraduate study, but offered him a teaching position along with a $2,310 annual grant. Kaczynski was a complex analysis expert at Michigan, specializing in the geometric function theory. According to Professor Peter Duran, he was a peculiar man. Unlike the other graduate students, he was unique, gave his work much more of his attention, and was driven to find the truth in mathematics. Another of his Michigan math professors, George Peranian, said, "It is not enough to say he was smart." In a great evaluation, Professor Alan Shields wrote that Kaczynski may be the best man he has seen. Boundary functions. Kaczynski's dissertation was awarded the 1967 Sumner B. Myers Prize as Michigan's top mathematics dissertation. Kaczynski, then 25 years old, started teaching mathematics at the University of California, Berkeley, and in late 1967 was made an acting assistant professor there. Kaczynski was given the position of assistant professor by September 1968. His teaching evaluations indicated that he was unpopular with his students because he appeared uncomfortable while lecturing, taught straight from the textbook, and refused to respond to questions. On June 30, 1969, Kaczynski abruptly resigned from his position. Kaczynski relocated to Lombard, Illinois, to live with his parents. He moved to a remote cabin he had built outside Lincoln, Montana, 2 years later, in 1971, where he could live simply on little money, without electricity or running water, while doing odd jobs and receiving a significant amount of financial assistance from his family. Initially, Kaczynski wanted to become self-sufficient so he could live independently. He commuted to town on an old bicycle and, according to a volunteer at the neighborhood library, frequently went there to read classic works in their original languages. Later, other Lincoln residents claimed that such a way of life wasn't unusual in the neighborhood. A census taker in the 1990 census reported that Kaczynski's cabin had a bed, 2 chairs, storage trunks, a gas stove, and a lot of books. Kaczynski began engaging in acts of sabotage against developments close to his cabin in 1975, including setting fire to and planting booby traps. Jacques Ellul's writings were among the sociology and political philosophies he devoted himself to reading. His brother, David Kaczynski, later claimed that the Technological Society by Ellul became Ted's Bible. 3 people were killed and 23 others were injured as a result of a series of increasingly sophisticated bombs that Kaczynski mailed or personally delivered between 1978 and 1995. 16 bombs were attributed to Kaczynski. Even though the bombs changed over time, many of them had the initials FC, which Kaczynski later said that it meant Freedom Club. Buckley Crist, a professor of materials engineering at Northwestern University, was the target of Kaczynski's first mail bomb. A package with Crist's return address was discovered on May 25, 1978, in a parking lot at the University of Illinois in Chicago. Crist was suspicious because he hadn't sent the package, so he contacted campus police when it was returned to him. When Officer Terry Marker opened the package, it exploded, leaving him with only minor wounds. After the bombing in May 1978, Kaczynski went back to Chicago and stayed for a while, working at a foam rubber factory with his father and brother. His brother fired him in August 1978 after he wrote derogatory limericks about a female supervisor he had briefly courted. Leroy Burnson, a professor of electrical engineering at Brigham Young University, had the return address on a package that was found in a University of Utah hallway in 1981. It was brought to the campus police, where a bomb squad defused it. Patrick C. Fisher, a professor of computer science at Vanderbilt University, received a bomb in May 1982. When the bomb was detonated, Janet Smith, Fisher's secretary, suffered injuries to her face and arms while he was on vacation in Puerto Rico. The University of California, Berkeley, was the target of Kaczynski's following 2 bombings. Diogenes Angelikos, a professor of engineering, suffered serious injuries in the first incident in July 1982. John Hauser, a graduate student and captain in the U.S. Air Force, lost the vision in one eye and lost 4 fingers almost 3 years later, in May 1985. The bomb was handmade by Kaczynski, using wooden components. A bomb sent to the Boeing Company in Auburn, Washington, was defused by a bomb squad the following month. Professor James McConnell and research assistant Nicholas Swino both suffered serious injuries in November 1985 as a result of Swino opening a mail bomb addressed to McConnell. Hugh Scruton, a 38-year-old owner of a computer store in Sacramento, California, was killed by a bomb that was detonated in his store's parking lot and contained nails and splinters. On February 20, 1987, a similar assault against a computer store occurred in Salt Lake City, Utah. Gary Wright was hurt while attempting to remove the bomb, which was posed as a piece of lumber, from the store's parking lot. Wright's left arm had nerves severed, and more than 200 pieces of shrapnel were thrown into his body by the explosion. As he was detonating the bomb in Salt Lake City, Kaczynski was seen. This resulted in a widely circulated sketch of the suspect as a hooded man wearing aviator sunglasses and sporting a mustache. After a 6-year break, Kaczynski sent a bomb by mail to Charles Epstein's house in Berkeley, California, in 1993. When Epstein opened the package, he lost several fingers. Kaczynski sent a bomb via mail to Yale University professor of computer science, David Galanter, over the same weekend. Galanter lost part of his right hand, sight in one eye, and hearing in one ear. Thomas J. Mosser, a Bursa-Marsteller executive, died in 1994 after opening a mail bomb that was delivered to his New Jersey home. Kaczynski claimed in a letter to the New York Times that Mosser's efforts to restore Exxon's reputation after the Exxon Valdez oil spill was the reason he sent the bomb. After that, Gilbert Brent Murray, the president of the California Forestry Association, a lobbying organization for the timber industry, was killed in 1995 by a mail bomb sent to the outgoing president, William Dennison, who had retired. Kaczynski wrote several letters to the media in 1995, outlining his objectives and requesting that a major newspaper print his 35,000-word essay called Industrial Society and Its Future verbatim. The FBI later dubbed this document the Unabomber manifesto. He demanded that if this request was granted, he would desist from attacks. Although there was disagreement over whether the essay should be published, Attorney General Janet Reno and FBI Director Louis Freeh advocated for its release out of concern for the general populace and in the hope that a reader would be able to identify the author. Following the publication of the manifesto, the FBI's offer of a reward for information leading to the capture of the Unabomber generated thousands of leads. Kaczynski's brother David hired Chicago-based private investigator Susan Swanson to look into Ted's activities covertly while the FBI evaluated fresh leads. Given the alleged difficulty in getting the FBI's attention, David later hired Washington, D.C. Attorney Tony Bichelier to organize the evidence obtained by Swanson and contact the agency. Kaczynski's family was worried that any attempt by the FBI to get in touch with him would result in violence, so they wanted to shield him from the threat of an FBI raid, like those at Ruby Ridge or Waco. Early in 1996, a Bichelier-affiliated detective got in touch with Clinton Van Zandt, a former FBI hostage negotiator and criminal profiler. David's handwritten letters from his brother were typewritten copies that Bichelier asked him to compare to the manifesto. Molly Flynn at the FBI received a copy of the Ted Kaczynski essay from Bichelier in February 1996. She sent the essay to the task force in San Francisco. James Fitzgerald, an FBI profiler, noticed similarities in the writings. David Kaczynski attempted to remain anonymous, but his identity was quickly revealed. A few days later, an FBI agent team was sent to Washington, D.C., to question David, his wife, and their attorney. David brought letters from his brother in their original envelopes to this and subsequent meetings, allowing the FBI task force to use the postmark dates to add more detail to their timeline of Ted's activities. David had once looked up to and tried to imitate his older brother, but he had since given up the survivalist way of life. His identity was leaked to CBS News in early April 1996, despite the FBI's assurances that he would remain anonymous and that his brother would not find out who had turned him in. Louis Freeh, the FBI director, requested that CBS wait 24 hours before breaking the story on the evening news when CBS anchorman Dan Rather called. The search warrant was hurriedly completed by the FBI and approved by a federal judge in Montana. Subsequently, the FBI launched an internal leak investigation, but the leak's origin was never discovered. On April 3, 1996, FBI agents arrested a disheveled Kaczynski at his cabin. 40,000 handwritten journal pages with bomb-making experiments, descriptions of the Unabomber crimes, and a cache of bomb parts were found during the search, along with one live bomb. Additionally, they discovered what appeared to be the first draft of industrial society and its future intact form. The Unabomber was now the subject of the most expensive investigation in FBI history. Following his capture, theories arose linking Kaczynski to the Northern California Zodiac Killer, who brutally murdered 5 people between 1968 and 1969. The fact that both people were highly intelligent with an interest in bombs and codes, lived in the San Francisco Bay Area from 1967 to 1969, and both threatened continued violence if their demands for publication of their works were not met, were among the connections that sparked suspicion. However, not all of the killings could be linked to Kaczynski's whereabouts.